Greetings and salutations, viewers of YouTube. I am your storytelling pal, Big Al, and welcome back to my channel. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good jazz. A couple of disclaimers before I start. These stories are what I call true-ish. They are kind of sort of true as best I can remember them. If I have to fudge a fact or two to make the story funnier, then I'm going to do so. To try to protect privacy, sometimes I will change names at people's request, or, I'll always try to leave off last names. When I can, I try to leave off locations. All that good jazz. Second disclaimer. My grandest hope is that millions of people will watch these videos and have their day brightened by just the laughter of a funny story. I'm enough of a realist to know that, YouTube comment sections can be really nasty places. And, things get said about people's appearance and their voice and their personality and yada, yada, yada. Political stuff gets said, religious stuff gets said. I do my comment section a little bit different. If someone, posts something negative like that, one thing I can guarantee you is you're not going to hurt me, because I can't, I understand that I'm not going to be liked by everyone. And I understand that people will probably have mean things to say to me. And if they're not paying or laying me, I don't care. And then secondly, I just delete comments like that. I do not leave them up and give them the space to exist, because this channel exists to kind of be a break from all of that. So, I kind of tend my comment section kind of like a gardener, tends their garden. You just kind of weed out the stuff that you don't want in there. So, with all that said, let's get into today's story. Now, for this story to make sense, I know that for some of the younger people today, it's going to it's a time, that they can't really wrap their head around really well, because it's just so far out of their realm of experience. So, right around the time I graduated high school, the first few years thereafter, the flow of information was a lot less. We didn't not only did we not have like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all of that stuff, we didn't have email. We didn't really have the internet as it's now known. Like, there were a handful of people I graduated with that were aware of an internet that the military used. But in terms of it being available to civilians, no, that just was not happening. Cell phones were basically, you only had a cell phone if you were a doctor or a drug dealer. That was kind of the, level of phone technology we had. Didn't have caller ID. Everything was landlines. Except for, the doctors and drug dealers that had cell phones. And so just information moved at a much different pace than what it moves at today. And that's kind of important to know about this story. So, as this story starts, it's a couple of years after I graduated, which means that, my family, basically 5 days after I graduated from high school, my family moved. And I took a couple of different moves before I eventually rejoined them. But by this point, I had rejoined them. And of my two best friends, Herman, the one that was 2 years younger than Nuge and I, he was a senior now. So, he was still at the same school that Nuge and I had gone to, and he was a senior. And then Nuge's family had also moved. Our fathers worked at the same like industrial plant, and so they were also living where my parents and I lived. And so, Nuge and I would hang out every so often, and we were having our experiences, being kind of living in a different environment and stuff. And so, like this one night after my parents went to bed, I basically took some of my prescription drugs recreationally. And I know I shouldn't do that. Please don't do that yourself. This is not me, advocating for such things. I was young and dumb then. Now I'm not young anymore. But anyway, so I don't know really what my thinking was, but for some reason, after I took it, I thought I was going to die. And so I made calls. I think trying to say goodbye to some people that, I'd been to high school with and stuff. And, like it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the people just aren't that awake. Their minds are kind of a little bit, not like kind of groggy. And as such, communication was a little bit iffy. And, after a while, like around dawn, I got tired enough that I went to bed. And, my paranoia that I had been about to die proved to be false. And so I woke up like, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just kind of started going about my day. What I didn't realize apparently, and until that evening, I just had no clue what was going on back in the little town where like I'd been to high school. And to give you an idea of how small the town was, on average, the high school has 400 students, about 100 each grades 9 through 12. So it's kind of one of those little places where everyone knows everything about everyone. And so, I just didn't think about anything, down there that day because I barely remembered making the phone calls from the night before myself. And so that's why when I'm sitting in my parents' den, which from the windows of my parents' den, it kind of offered this really nice view of the entire cul-de-sac, I was kind of shocked because Nuge's car pulled up, and I, to kind of put this into perspective for you, Nuge is from northern Indiana. He had moved to Kentucky, and that was kind of what bonded Herman and Nuge and I, was that we were kind of the new kids, and it was kind of a us against the world type thing. So, this was probably in the 30 or something or so years that Nuge and I have been best friends. This is the moment where his Midwestern roots showed it like themselves the most strongly. Because when I look out, he gets out of his car and he's got on like a sport coat and a dress shirt and a tie. And, he's got these 2 guys that had gone to high school with us, Goober and Ike, in tow. And they're carrying like flowers and covered dishes. And so I'm looking out the window at this, and I'm just like, what the absolute fuck is going on is kind of what's going through my head. And so I walk out the back door and, meet them on the sidewalk. And Nuge looks at me and he goes, "Dude, the word on the street in Russellville is you're dead." And I was like, what? And so apparently when I'd been making these phone calls in the wee hours of the morning, like, I had told people that I thought I was going to die, and they had been just asleep enough, some of them apparently, to think that, they were being called and told that I was dead. And so it had gotten so far out of hand that at my old high school, they announced on the intercom that I was dead. And poor Herman, now something to keep in mind about him, because Nuge and Herman and I are just all opposites from each other. Like, it's kind of a comical thing. Herman is very taciturn. He's very shy. He's kind of quiet, keeps to himself. Every once in a blue moon, he would just talk my ear off, and I would feel honored just to be, opened up like that to me. But for the most part, he is, really, very, matter of fact, taciturn, just kind of, shy. You're not going to get a lot out of him unless he's really super comfortable with you. And so for him, one, to hear this horrible news over the intercom, which, looking back on it, I wish there was a way that the school administration could have done that a little bit more, respectfully and tactfully, if, because God forbid if that had been the truth and he found out about it that way, that would have been bad. And I do feel really bad for that moment. Whenever I take a drink of my refreshing cold beverage, that's a sign for you people at home to also take a drink of your refreshing cold beverages, by the way. But yeah, so not only did he get this horrible news over the intercom as part of the afternoon announcements, but from what I was told, people kind of swarmed him and were kind of hugging him and trying to comfort him. And, he's not the kind of guy that's really the right way to respond. I feel like, after 30 something years as best friends, I can say that about him. If it ever was the case that, and, I assume that at some point, he or I probably will pass away one before the other. And if I pass away first and, when he gets that news, he needs space, not a bunch of people swarming him, which is, from what I was told exactly what happened. So I felt really bad for him about that. Back to Nuge though. When I said that about him being Midwestern, so he had been down there visiting our high school friends. And somehow within a couple of hours, as any good Midwestern Lutheran would do, he found a sport coat, a dress shirt, a tie, and showed up with a covered dish at my parents' house. And that has to be the most Midwestern of things that, anyone could ever do, because if any of you are from the upper Midwest of the United States, that is textbook Midwestern grief. And so, I did think that was kind of, touching. I feel kind of embarrassed and apologetic that I put him through that. But it's also something that's kind of funny that just that Midwestern drive kicked in, and it's covered dish, sport coat, tie, parents' house. Boom. And so much more slowly than the news of my quote unquote death had gone out, the news that I was actually alive did filter out. Some people, found out more quickly than others. I think there might be a small handful of people that never have found out. I did remember talking to someone who said that they had asked someone who went to high school at our high school, who was a year ahead of me. And she said that, and she was always kind of a weird person to begin with, but she said that I was dead, but that I had appeared to her from the great beyond. And that she'd run into me at the festival our town holds every year. And she walked up to me and she handed me a chicken leg. And I thanked her. And then I just started to float and I drifted off into the air. I really I don't know how much LSD it required to get her to kind of achieve that level of enlightenment, but I wish her all the best in that. Anyway, hope y'all have enjoyed the story. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good jazz. I hope you're having a good one. I am out.